1 year after her final chemotherapy treatment, Catherine stood in the same garden where she had filmed her public statement, but this time she was preparing for a very different kind of announcement. Her latest scans had shown no evidence of disease, and Dr. Harrison had used the word that every cancer survivor dreams of hearing: cured. The garden looked different now, too. Catherine and the children had planted a special section dedicated to hope and healing. Roses that bloomed in vibrant colors, lavender that filled the air with calming fragrance, and a small herb garden where Louis loved to help harvest ingredients for family meals. Each plant represented a milestone in their journey back to health and wholeness. William found her there, as he had so many times over the past year, but his approach was lighter now, unburdened by the weight of fear that had shadowed their steps for so many months. "The children are asking if they can invite friends for your celebration dinner tonight," he said, settling beside her on the bench that had become their place for important conversations. "Of course," Catherine laughed, "though I'm not sure our dining room can handle George's entire football team, plus Charlotte's riding group, plus Louis's nursery class." "We'll figure it out," William said, the phrase that had become their family motto during the difficult months. "We always do." The evening celebration was indeed chaotic, with children running through the palace corridors while adults lingered over dinner, sharing stories and laughter that filled every room with joy. Princess Anne had brought homemade apple pie. Charles and Camilla arrived with flowers from their own garden, and even the palace staff, who had become like extended family during Catherine's treatment, joined the festivities. But the moment that moved Catherine most deeply came when Margaret, her chemotherapy nurse, arrived with a special gift, a photo album documenting the journeys of patients Catherine had met and supported through the Hope in Action program. Page after page showed families who had been helped by the initiative Catherine had created from her own experience of need. "Look at what you've built," Margaret said, sitting beside Catherine as they flipped through the photos. "Over 2,000 families have received support this year. Hundreds of early cancers have been detected because people heard your story and sought medical attention. You've literally saved lives." Catherine studied the faces in the photographs. Children who had their parents with them because of early detection, families who had stayed financially stable during treatment because of practical support, teenagers who had continued their education despite family health crises because of coordinated care programs. "We built this," Catherine corrected gently, "all of us together. I just happened to be the one with a public platform to get it started." Later that evening, after the guests had departed and the children were settled in their beds, Catherine and William found themselves alone in their sitting room. The space that had witnessed so many difficult conversations over the past year now felt lighter, infused with gratitude and peace. "Do you remember that morning when we first learned about the diagnosis?" Catherine asked, curled up in the chair where she had received that life-changing phone call. "Every detail," William replied. "I remember thinking our world was ending." But it wasn't ending, Catherine reflected. It was just changing, becoming something we couldn't have imagined, something deeper and more meaningful in ways we never expected. William moved to sit on the arm of her chair, taking her hand in the gesture that had anchored them through everything. "What do you think you'll remember most about this whole experience?" Catherine considered the question carefully. "The morning I realized I wasn't afraid anymore. It was about halfway through treatment, and I woke up and understood that I was going to be okay no matter what happened. Not because the medical reports were encouraging, but because I had learned that our love for each other was stronger than any disease. I knew that even if the worst happened, you and the children would carry the best parts of me forward, and that was enough." "And now?" William asked. "Now I feel like I've been given a gift, not the cancer, but the clarity that came from facing it. I know exactly what matters most, and I know I'm brave enough to fight for it. I know our children are stronger and more compassionate because they watched us face this together. I know you're an even more amazing husband and father than I realized before. And I know that I want to spend whatever time I have left making sure other families don't have to face this kind of crisis alone." The following week, Catherine returned to her full schedule of royal duties, but with a renewed sense of purpose that influenced every engagement. Whether she was opening a new hospital wing, visiting a school, or attending a state dinner, she carried with her the perspective of someone who had stared mortality in the face and chosen hope. Her public speaking took on new depth and authenticity. When she addressed healthcare workers, she spoke from personal experience about the difference their compassion made in patients' lives. When she met with young people, she shared honestly about facing challenges with courage and asking for help when needed. When she participated in charity events, her commitment to the causes was visibly deeper and more personal. The Hope in Action program continued to grow, expanding beyond cancer support to include families facing any serious health crisis. Catherine insisted on staying personally involved, reading reports about families who had been helped and sometimes visiting with patients who requested to meet her. One such visit particularly touched her heart. A 7-year-old boy named Thomas had been diagnosed with leukemia, and his mother had written to Catherine expressing how much hope the royal family's story had given their family. Catherine arranged to visit Thomas during one of his treatment sessions, bringing games and books to help pass the long hours of chemotherapy. "Are you the princess who had cancer too?" Thomas asked with the directness that only children possess. "I'm Catherine, and yes, I had cancer," she replied, settling into the chair beside his treatment bed. "But the doctors helped me get better just like they're helping you." "Did you feel scared?" Thomas asked. "Very scared sometimes," Catherine admitted. "But I learned that being scared doesn't mean you can't be brave at the same time." Thomas considered this seriously. "My mom cries sometimes when she thinks I'm sleeping." "That's because she loves you so much," Catherine explained. "Sometimes when people love us that much, they feel our hurt along with us. That's not something to worry about. It's something to be grateful for." As Catherine drove home from that visit, she reflected on how much her definition of success had evolved. Once, success had meant flawlessly executing royal duties, maintaining a perfect public image, and meeting the expectations placed upon her. Now success meant moments like the one she had just shared with Thomas, offering genuine comfort to a frightened child, speaking truthfully about difficult experiences, using her platform to create real change in people's lives. The anniversary of her diagnosis came and went quietly, marked only by a private family dinner and personal gratitude for the year of health that had followed. Catherine had learned not to fear such anniversaries, but to view them as milestones of survival and growth. Her hair had grown back completely, though it was slightly different in texture and color, a reminder of her journey that she wore with pride. She had gained weight back to a healthy level, her energy had returned in full measure, and her regular scans continued to show no evidence of disease. But the most profound changes were invisible: a deeper appreciation for ordinary moments, a clearer sense of what truly mattered, an unshakable faith in her family's ability to face any challenge together. The cancer had tried to diminish her life, but instead it had expanded her understanding of what it meant to live fully. Standing once again at her bedroom window as dawn broke over London, Catherine no longer saw uncertainty in the horizon. She saw possibility, opportunity, and the promise of many more years to love her family, serve her country, and help other families find hope in their darkest moments. The silent goodbye she had once feared, the possibility of leaving her children without a mother, her husband without a wife, her duties without completion, had transformed into a quiet hello to a life enriched by gratitude, deepened by adversity, and dedicated to ensuring that no family would have to face such challenges alone. Love had indeed conquered fear. Hope had triumphed over despair, and what had begun as their greatest crisis had become their greatest strength. The story that could have ended in tragedy had instead become a testament to the power of facing life's hardest moments with courage, grace, and an unwavering commitment to lifting others as they climbed. The morning Catherine chose to film her public statement, she woke before dawn and stood once again at her bedroom window, looking out at the palace grounds. But this time, instead of anxiety and uncertainty, she felt a profound sense of purpose. Today she would share her story with the world, not as a victim seeking sympathy, but as a survivor offering hope. Her hair had begun to grow back in soft, dark waves that caught the light differently than before. The new growth was slightly curlier and seemed to have hints of silver that hadn't been there before, battle scars that she wore with quiet pride. She had chosen not to wear a wig for the video, wanting people to see her exactly as she was in this moment of transition and healing. William found her there as the sun began to rise, slipping his arms around her waist from behind. "Ready for today?" he asked softly. "More than ready," Catherine replied, leaning back against his warmth. "I've been thinking about what I want to say, and I keep coming back to gratitude. Even though this was the hardest thing we've ever faced, I'm grateful it happened. William turned her to face him, raising an eyebrow in gentle question. I'm grateful because it showed me how strong our family really is, Catherine explained. I'm grateful because it reminded me not to take a single day for granted. I'm grateful because it connected me to thousands of other people fighting similar battles. And I'm grateful because it proved that love really can sustain us through anything. The video was filmed in their private garden, where the children often played and where some of their happiest family moments had unfolded. Catherine sat on a simple wooden bench wearing a soft blue sweater that complemented her eyes. William remained just out of frame, offering silent support, while George, Charlotte, and Louis played quietly in the background. 3 months ago, I received news that no one ever wants to hear, Catherine began, looking directly into the camera with steady composure. I was diagnosed with cancer, and my world suddenly became very small and very focused on what truly matters most: family, health, and the precious gift of time we have together. She spoke for 6 minutes, touching on the fear that had initially overwhelmed her, the strength she had discovered within herself and her family, the incredible care she had received from her medical team, and the overwhelming support from extended family and friends. I want to be clear about something, Catherine said near the end of her message. This experience has not made me a better person. I was already the person I needed to be to face this challenge. What it has done is remind me that we all possess reserves of strength we don't know about until we need them. It has reminded me that asking for help is not weakness but wisdom. And it has reminded me that hope is not something we have. It's something we choose again and again, especially when choosing hope feels impossible. She concluded by encouraging others to trust their instincts about their health, to seek medical attention when something feels wrong, and to remember that a cancer diagnosis, while frightening, is not an automatic death sentence. Early detection saves lives, she said simply. Please don't delay getting checked if you have concerns. The video was released simultaneously across all Palace social media platforms and was picked up immediately by news organizations around the world. Within hours, it had been viewed millions of times, and the Palace communication team was inundated with messages of support from people sharing their own cancer journeys. One message that particularly moved Catherine came from a young mother in Wales who wrote, "Your courage in sharing your story gave me the push I needed to finally see a doctor about symptoms I'd been ignoring. They found my cancer early because I acted quickly after seeing your video. Thank you for possibly saving my life." The public response was overwhelming in its positivity. People shared stories of their own health scares, their families' battles with cancer, their gratitude for Catherine's honesty and openness. Social media was flooded with messages of support, photos of families who had faced similar challenges, and pledges to prioritize health and family time. Medical charities reported significant increases in donations and inquiries about cancer screening programs. The Kate effect that had always influenced fashion choices now extended to health awareness, encouraging people to take symptoms seriously and seek timely medical care. But perhaps the most meaningful response came from other cancer patients and survivors who expressed gratitude for seeing someone in the public eye represent their experience with such honesty and grace. "She didn't make it look easy," wrote one woman undergoing treatment. "She made it look possible." 3 weeks after the video release, Catherine resumed her public duties with a visit to the cancer center where she had received treatment. She spent time with current patients, their families, and the medical staff who had become like family during her own journey. The visit was deeply emotional for everyone involved. Margaret, the nurse who had guided Catherine through her chemotherapy sessions, introduced her to current patients as someone who truly understands what you're going through. Catherine spent an hour talking with a teenage girl who was midway through treatment, sharing practical advice about managing side effects and maintaining hope during the most difficult days. "The hardest part isn't the physical symptoms," Catherine told the young woman. "It's the feeling that your life has been put on hold. But what I learned is that life doesn't stop during cancer treatment. It just becomes more focused on what really matters." William accompanied Catherine on this visit, and he spent time talking with family members who were supporting loved ones through cancer treatment. He shared honestly about the helplessness he had felt at times, the importance of maintaining normal routines for children, and the strength that comes from accepting help from others. That evening, as they drove home through London, Catherine reflected on how much her perspective had changed since those early morning drives to chemotherapy appointments. The city looked the same, but she saw it differently now, with deeper appreciation for the ordinary magic of people going about their daily lives, healthy and unaware of how precious their normalcy really was. "I want to do more," Catherine told William as they crossed the Thames. "Not just awareness campaigns, but real support for families going through this. Maybe a program that provides practical help, childcare during treatment appointments, meal delivery, transportation assistance." William smiled, recognizing the passionate advocacy tone that always emerged when Catherine identified a cause that mattered to her. "What would you call it?" Catherine thought for a moment. "Hope in action," she said. "Because hope isn't just a feeling. It's something we put into practice through concrete support for each other." Over the following months, Catherine worked with various charities to develop exactly that kind of program. Her personal experience with cancer had given her insights into the practical challenges families faced that went far beyond medical treatment. She understood the exhaustion of maintaining normal life while fighting an extraordinary battle, the financial stress of unexpected medical expenses, the emotional burden on children who didn't fully understand what was happening. The Hope in Action initiative launched 6 months later, providing comprehensive support services for families affected by cancer. It offered everything from emergency childcare to meal delivery, from transportation to treatment appointments to counseling services for family members. Catherine's cancer journey had begun as a private family crisis, but it had evolved into a platform for helping others face similar challenges. She had transformed her own experience of vulnerability into a source of strength for thousands of other families. Looking back on those frightening early days when the future had seemed so uncertain, Catherine marveled at how much good had emerged from such a difficult experience. The cancer had threatened to steal her future, but instead it had given her a clearer sense of purpose, a deeper appreciation for her blessings, and a powerful way to serve others facing their own dark moments. Her hair had grown back thicker and more beautiful than before. Her energy had returned in full measure, and her family had emerged from the crisis stronger and more united than ever. But perhaps most importantly, she had discovered that even our worst fears can become sources of unexpected grace when we face them with courage, love, and an unwavering commitment to helping others. 6 weeks after her final chemotherapy treatment, Catherine sat in Dr. Harrison's office waiting for the results that would determine her future. The scans had been completed 3 days earlier, and the waiting had been almost unbearable. William sat beside her, his hand resting protectively on her knee, both of them trying to read Dr. Harrison's expression as she reviewed the reports. "The results are better than we dared hope," Dr. Harrison finally said, looking up with a genuine smile. "The tumors have shrunk by 85%. What remains appears to be inactive tissue, and there's no evidence of spread to other areas." Catherine felt the world shift around her, as if everything had suddenly come back into sharp focus after months of living in a soft, uncertain blur. "Does that mean—" "It means you're in remission," Dr. Harrison confirmed. "We'll continue monitoring you closely with scans every 3 months for the first year, then every 6 months after that." "But Catherine, this is exactly the outcome we were hoping for." William's grip on her hand tightened, and Catherine could feel him trembling slightly beside her. They had prepared themselves for various scenarios, but somehow this overwhelming relief felt almost as shocking as the original diagnosis had been. "When can we tell the children?" Catherine asked, thinking immediately of George, Charlotte, and Louis. "Whenever you're ready," Dr. Harrison replied. "You'll still need to take things gradually as your strength returns, but there's no medical reason to delay sharing good news." The drive home from the hospital felt surreal. London looked brighter somehow, the familiar streets and landmarks taking on an almost magical quality. Catherine found herself noticing details she had missed during the past few months. The way afternoon light hit the buildings, the expressions on people's faces as they went about their daily lives, the simple beauty of ordinary moments. "I want to tell them together," Catherine said as they pulled through the palace gates, all three at once as a family. William nodded, his emotions still too raw for many words. He had carried the weight of fear for so long that joy felt almost foreign, requiring a complete readjustment of everything he had been bracing himself to face. They found the children in the garden, where George was helping Louis fly a kite, while Charlotte practiced cartwheels on the grass. The scene was so perfectly normal, so beautifully ordinary, that Catherine had to pause for a moment to absorb the sheer wonder of being here to witness it. "Children," William called, "come sit with us on the bench. Mummy and I have something important to tell you." The three children abandoned their activities and gathered around the wooden bench where Catherine and William had shared so many family conversations over the years. George's expression was serious, clearly prepared for significant news, while Charlotte and Louis appeared more curious than concerned. "Do you remember when we told you that Mummy was sick and needed special medicine from the doctors?" Catherine began. All three children nodded solemnly. "Well, today the doctors told us that the medicine worked very well, and Mummy is going to be completely healthy again," William continued. There was a moment of processing silence before Louis launched himself into Catherine's arms with a squeal of delight. "Does that mean no more hospitals?" "Much fewer hospitals," Catherine confirmed, squeezing him tightly. "And no more days when Mummy has to rest instead of playing with you?" Charlotte, ever practical, asked, "Will your hair grow back now?" "Yes, sweetheart. It should start growing back soon, though it might be a different color or texture when it does." George, who had been quiet during the celebration, finally spoke up. "Are you really truly better? Not just feeling better for now?" Catherine recognized the careful way he phrased the question. Her eldest son had clearly been thinking deeply about her illness and its implications. "The doctors believe I'm going to stay healthy for a very long time," she said honestly. "They'll keep checking to make sure, but yes, I'm really, truly better." George's smile, when it finally came, was radiant with relief and joy. That evening, they celebrated with a family dinner prepared entirely by William and the children. The menu was chaotic: fish fingers, roast vegetables, mashed potatoes, and ice cream for dessert. But it was made with love and seasoned with laughter. Catherine sat at their kitchen table, watching her family bustle around her with renewed energy and optimism, feeling grateful for every single moment. Later that night, after the children were settled in their beds, Catherine and William found themselves alone in their sitting room for the first time since receiving the news. The magnitude of what they had been through and what they had just learned seemed to settle around them like a warm blanket. "I keep waiting to wake up," Catherine said, curled against William's side on their sofa. "This feels too good to be real." "It's real," William said, pressing a kiss to the top of her head. "We did it. You did it. We all did it," Catherine corrected. "I couldn't have gotten through this without you, without the children, without everyone who helped us carry this burden." They talked late into the night about the future they had feared they might not have together. There were trips they wanted to take as a family, traditions they wanted to establish, dreams they wanted to pursue. The cancer had stolen months from them, but it had also taught them to value every day, every opportunity, every chance to love each other more fully. The next morning brought the challenging task of deciding how and when to inform the public about Catherine's diagnosis and recovery. The Palace communications team had been preparing for this moment, knowing that the news would eventually need to be shared, but wanting to ensure the family had time to process everything privately first. "I want to be open about it," Catherine told the communications director during their meeting. "Not every detail. But I want people to know that this happened and that early detection and good medical care made all the difference." William agreed. If Catherine's story can encourage even one person to seek medical attention when they're concerned about their health, then sharing it will have been worthwhile. They decided to release a statement the following week, after Catherine had time to record a brief video message explaining her journey and expressing gratitude for the support they had received. The video would be filmed in their garden, with the children playing in the background, emphasizing the family unity that had carried them through the crisis. As they prepared for this public revelation, Catherine reflected on how much she had changed during the past few months. The diagnosis had stripped away many of the things she had thought defined her: her hair, her energy, her sense of invulnerability, but it had also revealed strength she hadn't known she possessed. She was still the same woman who had married William in Westminster Abbey, who had given birth to 3 beautiful children, who had dedicated her life to royal service. But now she was also a cancer survivor, someone who had faced her worst fears and emerged victorious. The experience had added layers to her identity that she was still learning to understand and appreciate. William, too, had been transformed by the experience. His devotion to family had always been strong, But the crisis had revealed the true depth of his capacity for love, support, and quiet strength. Catherine had watched him grow into an even more remarkable husband and father during their darkest hours. Looking ahead, they knew that life would return to its normal rhythms of royal duties, school activities, and family adventures. But they would carry with them the profound awareness of how precious and fragile these ordinary moments truly were. Every bedtime story, every family dinner, every laugh shared in their garden would be tinged with gratitude for the gift of being together. The cancer had tried to steal their future, but instead it had taught them to treasure their present. They had faced the unthinkable and discovered that love really could conquer anything, that families really could emerge stronger from their greatest challenges, and that hope really was the most powerful medicine of all. The morning Catherine woke up to find clumps of hair on her pillow. She stared at them for a long moment before calling for William. He appeared in their bathroom doorway, still wearing his running clothes, having just returned from his daily jog around Hyde Park, a routine that had become his way of managing stress and clearing his head. "It's starting," Catherine said simply, holding up a handful of chestnut strands. William crossed the room and gently took the hair from her hands, disposing of it without ceremony. "How do you feel about it?" Catherine studied her reflection in the mirror. Her hair had always been one of her defining features, the glossy waves that photographers loved to capture, that children reached for during public appearances, that William had run his fingers through during countless quiet moments over the years. "Strangely relieved," she admitted. "I've been waiting for this to happen, checking my pillow every morning. Now that it's started, I can stop worrying about when it will begin." They had already discussed practical solutions. Catherine's stylist had discreetly arranged for several high-quality wigs to be made, using photos from various events to match her natural color and style perfectly. The palace hairdresser had also researched beautiful scarves and headpieces that would look elegant during public appearances. "Do you want me to help you cut it short?" William offered. "Might be easier to manage that way." Catherine nodded. "Let's do it before the children wake up. I want to control how this happens." William retrieved a pair of scissors from the drawer, and Catherine settled onto the small stool in front of her dressing table mirror. The morning light filtering through the window seemed especially gentle, casting everything in a soft, forgiving glow. "Are you sure?" William asked, holding the scissors hesitantly. "I'm sure," Catherine said. "Besides, it's just hair. It will grow back." William began cutting carefully, starting with small sections and gradually working his way around her head. Catherine's long waves fell to the floor like autumn leaves, each snip bringing her closer to a new version of herself. When he finished, she had a stylish bob that actually made her eyes look larger and more striking. "You look beautiful," William said, meaning every word. Catherine turned her head from side to side, examining the change. "It's different, but not terrible." Over the following days, her hair continued to thin until she decided to shave off what remained. William helped with that too, using the electric clippers with steady hands while Catherine closed her eyes and tried to imagine herself as a warrior, preparing for battle. The children's reactions were mixed but ultimately accepting. Louis at 5 was the most matter-of-fact about it. "Mummy, you look like Daddy when he cuts his hair really short," he announced cheerfully. Charlotte was curious and practical. "Does it feel cold?" she asked, reaching up to pat Catherine's smooth head. "Will it grow back purple?" "I think purple hair would be lovely." George, being older and more aware of the situation, was initially quiet. Later that evening, he approached Catherine while she was reading in the sitting room. "Mummy," he said seriously, "Sarah's grandmother had no hair when she was sick, and now her hair grew back even prettier than before." Catherine pulled her eldest son onto her lap. "Did that make you feel better about Mummy's hair?" George nodded.
"I think you're brave."
And Daddy said brave people always win their fights. The following week brought Catherine's third and final chemotherapy session. She arrived at the clinic wearing one of her new scarves, a beautiful silk piece in shades of blue and green that complemented her skin tone perfectly. Margaret greeted her with a warm smile and immediately complimented the scarf choice. "You're glowing today," Margaret observed as she prepared the IV line. "How are you feeling?" "Stronger," Catherine replied, and she meant it. The physical side effects had been challenging, but she had discovered reserves of mental strength she hadn't known existed. "I feel like I'm winning." This final treatment session was different from the previous two. Catherine felt more relaxed, more confident in her body's ability to handle the medication. She had brought thank you cards for the staff and a small gift for Margaret, a beautiful bookmark with an inscription thanking her for her kindness and expertise. During the 3-hour session, Catherine found herself thinking about the future with genuine optimism. Dr. Harrison had been encouraged by her response to treatment, and the latest scans showed significant improvement. Surgery might not be necessary after all, though they would continue monitoring her progress closely. William arrived to pick her up, as had become their routine. He always brought coffee from her favorite shop and insisted on driving her home himself, using the quiet car ride to check in about how she was feeling and what she needed for the rest of the day. "How was it?" he asked as they merged into London traffic. "Good," Catherine said. "Final one, at least for now. Margaret thinks I'll start feeling more energetic within a few weeks." "Just in time for Charlotte's play," William said. Charlotte's school production of The Secret Garden had become a major milestone in their family calendar. Charlotte had been cast as Mary Lennox, the lead role, and had been practicing her lines with impressive dedication for weeks. Catherine had promised to attend, and wild horses couldn't have kept her away. The night of the play, Catherine wore one of her most beautiful wigs, styled exactly like her natural hair but perhaps even more lustrous than the original. She and William sat in the front row of the small school theater, surrounded by other parents armed with cameras and proud smiles. When Charlotte appeared on stage in her Victorian costume, delivering her lines with confidence and dramatic flair, Catherine felt tears of pure joy streaming down her face. This was what she had been fighting for, these precious family moments, these ordinary yet extraordinary milestones that made life beautiful. Charlotte spotted her parents in the audience during her first scene and gave them a barely perceptible wink that made both Catherine and William burst into quiet laughter. Their daughter was a natural performer, commanding the stage with the same poise she showed when meeting heads of state at official functions. After the play, Charlotte ran to them still wearing her costume, her face flushed with excitement and triumph. "Did you see me, Mummy? Did you see how I remembered all my lines?" "You were absolutely magnificent," Catherine said, pulling Charlotte into a tight hug. "I'm so proud of you I could burst." Later that evening, as they tucked Charlotte into bed, she looked up at Catherine with serious eyes. "Mummy, are you feeling better now? You looked happy tonight." "I am feeling better, sweetheart," Catherine replied. "And seeing you on that stage made me feel happier than I've felt in weeks." Charlotte smiled sleepily. "I practiced extra hard because I wanted to make you proud while you were sick." Catherine's heart swelled with love for this thoughtful, talented little girl who had worked so hard to bring joy to her mother during a difficult time. "You make me proud every single day, Charlotte. Not just when you're on stage, but when you're kind to Louis, when you help Daddy with things around the house, when you do your homework without being asked. You're an amazing daughter." As William and Catherine walked to their own bedroom that night, they reflected on how much their family had grown stronger through this challenge. The children had shown remarkable resilience and maturity. William had proven himself to be an even more devoted husband and father than Catherine had thought possible, and she had discovered that she was capable of fighting harder than she had ever imagined. 3 treatments down," William said as they settled into bed. "And hopefully many years of health ahead," Catherine replied, already looking forward to George's upcoming football tournament and Louis's 5th birthday party. The future stretched before them, bright with possibility and rich with the promise of countless more family celebrations to come. The first chemotherapy session was scheduled for a Tuesday morning at a private clinic in central London. Catherine had insisted on driving herself, wanting to maintain some sense of independence and control over her situation. William respected her decision, but followed in a separate car with their protection officer, staying close enough to help if needed, but far enough away to honor her autonomy. The clinic was nothing like the sterile hospital environments Catherine had imagined. Soft lighting filled the treatment room, and comfortable recliners were positioned near large windows overlooking a peaceful garden. Other patients sat quietly, some reading, others sleeping, a few chatting softly with family members who had come to provide support during the long hours of treatment. Catherine settled into her assigned chair and rolled up her sleeve for the IV line. The nurse, a kind woman named Margaret, who had been treating cancer patients for over 20 years, worked with gentle efficiency while maintaining a stream of comfortable conversation. "First time?" Margaret asked, though she already knew the answer. "Yes," Catherine replied, watching as the clear tube was connected to her arm. "I'm not sure what to expect." "Everyone responds differently," Margaret explained, adjusting the flow rate on the IV machine. "Some people feel tired, others feel energetic. Some experience nausea, others feel perfectly fine. Your body will tell you what it needs." The medication began its slow journey into Catherine's bloodstream, carrying with it both hope and uncertainty. She had brought a book, but found herself unable to concentrate on the words. Instead, she watched the other patients and marveled at their quiet courage. An elderly man worked on a crossword puzzle while his wife knitted beside him. A young woman about Charlotte's age typed on her laptop, apparently conducting business calls between treatment cycles. These people were living proof that life could continue during cancer treatment. They were working, creating, loving, and fighting, not letting the disease define every aspect of their existence. Catherine found their resilience inspiring and slightly overwhelming. 3 hours later, she walked out of the clinic feeling surprisingly normal. The drive home through London traffic was uneventful, and she arrived at Kensington Palace in time to have lunch with the children. George and Charlotte were at school, but Louis was having a play date with friends in the palace gardens. "How did it go?" William asked as she entered their private sitting room. "Better than I expected," Catherine replied honestly. "The staff was wonderful, and I actually felt quite relaxed." William's relief was visible. He had spent the morning trying to focus on official correspondence, but found himself checking his phone constantly for updates. "Any side effects yet?" Margaret said they usually don't appear for a day or two. "She gave me some medication to take if I start feeling nauseous." They decided not to tell the children about the specific timing of treatments. Catherine wanted her medical appointments to fade into the background of normal family life, rather than becoming events that created anxiety for George, Charlotte, and Louis. That evening, everything seemed wonderfully ordinary. William helped George with math homework, while Catherine supervised Charlotte's piano practice. Louis built elaborate towers with his blocks, then knocked them down with great dramatic flair. They had dinner together at the kitchen table, sharing stories about their day and making plans for the weekend. It was only later, as Catherine was getting ready for bed, that the first wave of nausea hit. She gripped the edge of the bathroom sink and took deep breaths, trying to control the sudden queasiness that seemed to come from nowhere. William appeared in the doorway, holding the anti-nausea medication. "Margaret said to take one as soon as you feel anything," he said gently, handing her a glass of water. Catherine swallowed the pill and leaned against William's chest. "I was hoping I'd be one of the lucky ones who doesn't get sick." "You might still be," William said, rubbing her back in slow, comforting circles. This could pass quickly. The nausea did pass, but it returned the next morning, accompanied by a fatigue unlike anything Catherine had ever experienced. It wasn't the tired feeling that came after a long day of royal engagements or chasing active children. This was a bone-deep exhaustion that made even simple tasks feel monumentally difficult. Catherine found herself taking naps in the afternoon, something she hadn't done since the children were babies. William rearranged his schedule to be home more often, taking over bedtime stories and morning routines when Catherine needed extra rest. The hardest part was maintaining the appearance of normalcy during their limited public appearances. Catherine had one engagement that week, opening a new children's hospital wing, and she was determined not to cancel. The palace makeup artist worked carefully to conceal the slight pallor in her skin, and Catherine's stylist chose a vibrant blue dress that would photograph well under the bright camera lights. Standing outside the hospital, smiling and waving for the cameras, Catherine drew on reserves of strength she didn't know she possessed. She toured the facility, spoke with patients and families, and gave a brief speech about the importance of pediatric care. No one in the crowd could have guessed that she had started chemotherapy just 4 days earlier. But William knew. He watched her carefully throughout the event, noting the slight tremor in her hands when she thought no one was looking, the way she gripped his arm a little tighter than usual as they walked through the hospital corridors. He marveled at her courage and felt a fierce pride in her determination to fulfill her duties despite everything she was facing. The second treatment session went more smoothly. Catherine knew what to expect now, and she brought her own pillow and a thermos of her favorite tea. Margaret greeted her like an old friend, and Catherine found herself looking forward to their conversations during the long treatment hours. "You're handling this remarkably well," Margaret observed as she checked Catherine's vital signs. I have a lot of motivation to get better, Catherine replied, thinking of George's upcoming football match and Charlotte's school play. Tell me about your children, Margaret said, settling into the chair beside Catherine's treatment recliner. Catherine's face lit up as she described her 3 little ones, George's serious nature and love of aviation, Charlotte's fearless spirit and passion for horses, Louis's infectious laughter and endless energy. Talking about them made the treatment time pass quickly and reminded Catherine why this fight was so important. After the second session, Catherine experienced the same pattern of delayed side effects, but this time she was prepared. She had stocked up on crackers and ginger tea, arranged for extra help with the children's activities, and cleared her calendar for several days of rest. William found her one evening sitting in the nursery that had once belonged to Louis, holding a small stuffed elephant that Charlotte had loved as a baby. The room was softly lit by a single lamp, and Catherine looked lost in thought. "Penny, for your thoughts," William said quietly, not wanting to startle her. "I was thinking about all the bedtime stories I've read in this room," Catherine said. "All the nights I rocked them to sleep. All the times they had bad dreams and came looking for comfort." William sat down beside her on the small sofa they had placed near the window. "You'll read many more bedtime stories." "I know," Catherine said, "but I'm realizing how precious these ordinary moments are. Before this happened, I sometimes felt frustrated by the daily routine, the constant demands, the exhaustion, the way every day seemed to blur into the next. Now I understand that those ordinary moments are actually the most extraordinary gift we have." William took her hand, the gesture that had become their anchor throughout this ordeal. "When you're feeling better, we should take the children somewhere special. Just the 5 of us, no royal duties, no official obligations. Maybe that little cottage in Scotland where we used to go before everything became so complicated." Catherine smiled, imagining lazy mornings in the Scottish countryside, the children running free in the heather, family picnics by the lake. "That sounds perfect," she said. "Something to look forward to." They sat together in the quiet nursery, surrounded by memories of their children's younger days and dreams of the adventures still to come. Outside, the London evening was settling into darkness, but inside their small circle of love and hope, the future still held infinite possibilities. The royal calendar had been quietly adjusted, though the public remained unaware of the careful choreography happening behind palace walls. Catherine's upcoming engagements were being postponed due to scheduling conflicts, while William's appearances were strategically reduced to allow him more time at home. The palace communications team had become masters of diplomatic language, crafting statements that revealed nothing while maintaining the illusion that everything was perfectly normal. Dr. Elizabeth Harrison arrived at Kensington Palace just after 9 in the morning, using the private entrance that allowed her to avoid any curious photographers. She had been treating members of the royal family for over 15 years, and her discretion was absolute. Today she carried more than her usual medical, but she brought the treatment plan that would determine the next several months of Catherine's life. William paced the length of their private study while Catherine sat calmly at the desk where she usually answered correspondence. The contrast between them was striking. He, unable to contain his nervous energy, and she, drawing strength from an inner stillness that had served her well throughout years of public scrutiny. "The good news," Dr. Harrison began, settling into the chair across from Catherine, "is that we caught this early enough that treatment should be very effective. The challenging news is that the next 6 months will be difficult." Catherine nodded, her hands folded neatly in her lap. "Define difficult, please." Dr. Harrison opened her folder and pulled out a detailed treatment schedule. "We'll start with chemotherapy next week. 3 sessions, 3 weeks apart. You'll likely experience fatigue, nausea, and some hair loss. After that, we'll reassess and determine if surgery is necessary." Hair loss. Catherine's hand instinctively moved to touch the chestnut waves that had become her signature. She had been photographed thousands of times, and her hair was often mentioned in fashion magazines as one of her most beautiful features. It seemed almost silly to worry about something so superficial when her life was at stake, but the thought of losing it felt like losing a part of herself. William stopped pacing and moved to stand behind Catherine's chair, his hands resting gently on her shoulders. "What about public appearances?" he asked. How long before people start asking questions? That depends on how Catherine responds to treatment, Dr. Harrison replied honestly. Some patients maintain their energy levels quite well, while others need more time to rest. We'll take it week by week. Catherine leaned back against William's solid presence. I want to attend Charlotte's school play next month, she said firmly. She's been practicing her lines for weeks, and I promised I'd be there. Dr. Harrison smiled. We'll do everything we can to make that happen. The key is not to overcommit and to listen to your body. After the doctor left, William and Catherine found themselves alone with the weight of reality settling around them like a heavy blanket. The treatment schedule was posted on the refrigerator in their private kitchen, looking strangely ordinary next to Charlotte's artwork and George's football practice times. We need to tell the children something, William said, standing at the kitchen island where they had shared countless family meals. George has been asking why you've been sad lately. Catherine felt her heart clench. Her oldest son was observant, inheriting both his father's perceptiveness and her own ability to read subtle emotional cues. At 9 years old, George was old enough to sense when something was wrong but too young to understand the complexities of adult problems. What if we tell them I'm going to be sick for a while? But the doctors are going to help me get better, Catherine suggested. We don't have to use the word cancer yet. William nodded slowly. And we tell them they might see me around more because I want to help take care of you. The afternoon brought an unexpected visitor. Princess Anne arrived unannounced, something she rarely did. William's aunt had always been direct, practical, and fiercely protective of family. She swept into their sitting room with her characteristic no-nonsense energy. I came to tell you that you're not going through this alone, Anne announced without preamble. I've cleared my schedule for the next 6 months to help with the children's activities. Charles and Camilla are prepared to take on additional engagements if needed. Catherine felt tears prick her eyes. The royal family could be complicated, with its rigid protocols and centuries-old traditions. But in times of crisis, they closed ranks with impressive unity. Anne, you don't need to... Catherine began. Nonsense, Anne interrupted. George has a football match on Saturday. Charlotte has writing lessons on Sunday, and Louis has that birthday party next week. Life continues, and those children need to feel that their world is stable. William exchanged a look with Catherine. They had been so focused on her treatment and how to manage their public duties that they hadn't fully considered how to maintain normalcy for the children. Anne, with her practical wisdom, had seen exactly what they needed. That evening, as they tucked the children into bed, Catherine and William made the decision to have the conversation they had been dreading. They gathered all 3 children in the large bedroom that had once belonged to William's grandmother, sitting together on the enormous bed that could easily accommodate the whole family. Mummy and Daddy want to talk to you about something important, William began, his voice gentle but serious. George, Charlotte, and Louis looked up at them with the trusting expressions that made Catherine's heart ache. These beautiful, innocent faces that looked at her with such complete faith in her ability to make everything right. Sometimes grown-ups get sick, Catherine said carefully, just like when you have a cold or a fever. But sometimes it's a different kind of sick that takes longer to get better. Charlotte, with her characteristic directness, asked, Are you sick, Mummy? Yes, sweetheart. I'm going to be sick for a while, and I'll need to go to the hospital sometime so the doctors can help me feel better. Louis, at 5 years old, crawled closer to Catherine and patted her arm comfortingly. Will you still read bedtime stories? As many as I can, Catherine promised, pulling him onto her lap. And when I can't, Daddy will read extra ones. George, ever the thoughtful older brother, asked quietly, Will you get better? Catherine and William had discussed this question extensively. How much hope was appropriate? How much honesty could young children handle? The doctors are very smart, and they're going to work very hard to help me get completely better, Catherine said. But it might take a while, and I might feel tired sometimes. They talked for another hour, answering questions and offering reassurances. When the children finally settled into their own beds, Catherine and William found themselves emotionally exhausted but oddly relieved. The first conversation was over, and the children had handled it better than expected. Later that night, as they lay in their own bed, William pulled Catherine close. You were amazing with them, he whispered into the darkness. We were amazing with them, Catherine corrected. We're going to get through this, William. All of us together, outside their window, London continued its endless rhythm, unaware that behind palace walls, a family was beginning the fight of their lives with courage, love, and an unshakable determination to protect what mattered most. The morning sun cast long shadows across the palace grounds as Catherine, Duchess of Cambridge, stood at her bedroom window. Her fingers traced the cool glass while she watched the early staff begin their daily routines in the courtyard below. Everything looked normal, but nothing felt normal anymore. 3 weeks had passed since the doctors delivered news that would change everything. The words still echoed in her mind like a cruel whisper that refused to fade. Stage 3, aggressive treatment needed immediately. Time was precious now, more precious than any crown jewel in the Tower of London. William had taken the news with the same quiet strength he showed the world every day. But Catherine knew him better than anyone. She saw how his hands trembled slightly when he thought no one was looking. She noticed how he stared at their children a little longer during bedtime stories, as if trying to memorize every detail of their faces. The hardest part wasn't facing her own fear. The hardest part was watching the man she loved carry this burden while still being expected to smile for cameras, attend state functions, and represent the crown with dignity. The royal family had weathered many storms, but this felt different. This was personal, intimate, and terrifying in ways that public scandals could never be. Catherine turned away from the window as she heard familiar footsteps in the hallway. William's morning walk to check on the children before breakfast had become a sacred ritual since the diagnosis. He would peek into George's room first, then Charlotte's, and finally little Louis's nursery. Sometimes she caught him just standing there, watching them sleep with an expression that broke her heart. "The children are still asleep," William said softly as he entered their private sitting room. His voice carried the weight of unspoken worries, the kind that kept him awake most nights now. Catherine nodded, settling into the chair by the fireplace where they had shared so many quiet moments over the years. This room had witnessed their joy when each child was born, their concerns about royal duties, their dreams for the future. Now it was becoming a sanctuary where they could drop their public masks and simply be a husband and wife, facing an uncertain tomorrow. "I've been thinking about what we discussed yesterday," Catherine said, her voice steady despite the storm raging inside her heart. "About telling the children." William's jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. They had both agreed that George, Charlotte, and Louis deserved to know something, but finding the right words seemed impossible. How do you explain to young children that their mother is sick without stealing their sense of security? How do you prepare them for what might come without destroying their childhood innocence? "Dr. Harrison suggested we wait until after the first round of treatment," William replied, settling into the chair across from her. "She thinks we'll have a better understanding of the timeline then." Timeline. Such a clinical word for something so deeply personal. Catherine had always been good with timelines. Royal engagements planned months in advance, state visits coordinated with precision, family holidays scheduled around official duties. But this timeline was different. This one measured hope against reality, strength against weakness, time against an enemy they couldn't see. The morning light grew stronger, filtering through the heavy curtains they had drawn for privacy. Soon their personal staff would arrive with breakfast, followed by the daily briefings about upcoming engagements. The machine of royal life would continue turning, regardless of their personal crisis. Catherine reached across the small space between their chairs and took William's hand. His fingers were cold despite the warm morning, and she could feel the tension in his grip. They had held hands like this on their wedding day, during the births of their children through moments of joy and celebration. Now they held hands like two people standing at the edge of a cliff, drawing strength from each other's touch. "Whatever happens," Catherine whispered, "I need you to promise me something." William's blue eyes met hers, and she saw the fear he tried so hard to hide from everyone else. "Anything," he said without hesitation. "Promise me that you'll help them remember the happy times. Not the hospital visits or the worried faces, but the laughter, the bedtime stories, the silly games we play in the garden. Promise me that's what they'll carry with them." William's throat worked as he swallowed hard. "Catherine, don't talk like—" "Please," she interrupted gently. "Let me say this. I need to know that no matter what happens, our children will know they were loved completely, absolutely, without reservation. I need to know that you'll tell them stories about us, about how we met, how we fell in love, how excited we were when each of them came into our lives." The silence stretched between them, filled with all the words they couldn't bring themselves to say. Outside, they could hear the distant sounds of London waking up, traffic, voices, the normal rhythm of life continuing for everyone else while their world had been turned upside down. William lifted their joined hands and pressed them against his forehead. "You're going to beat this," he said fiercely. "We're going to get through this together. And in 10 years, we'll be watching George graduate from university. And Charlotte will be rolling her eyes at us. And Louis will still be asking for one more bedtime story." Catherine smiled through the tears she had been holding back. "I love your certainty," she said. "I love that you can paint that picture and make it feel real." "It is real," William insisted. "It has to be." They sat together in the growing light, holding hands and holding on to hope. Soon the day would officially begin with all its demands and obligations. They would put on their public faces, attend their scheduled events, and show the world the steady strength everyone expected from them. But for now, in this quiet moment before the storm of royal life resumed, they were simply William and Catherine, a couple facing the biggest challenge of their lives together, drawing strength from a love that had already survived so much and would somehow have to be enough to carry them through whatever came next. The clock on the mantel chimed softly, marking another hour in their new reality. Time was moving forward whether they were ready or not, carrying them toward an uncertain future that would test everything they believed about love, family, and the strength of the human spirit.